Welcome to Noobsplaining. My name is Wolf. If this is your first time here, this is where I explain the totally over-the-top world that nerds like me love so much, that is the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So click that subscribe button, settle in, and prepare for a Noobsplaining session. Right, let's get on with this video. Because YouTube does not like people using naughty words in the first minute or so in any videos you produce, please bear with me while I drag this intro out a little bit longer than normal, because this week we're going to talk about the behemoth of a rolling fortress of a tank, that is, the Baneblade. Normally my videos follow a style of talking about the topic from an in-universe point of view and then from the tabletop point of view. I'm just going for it with this video. You have probably heard the phrase, the grimdark universe of 40k, which is the public mantra of 40k. The real mantra of 40k is that everything is gloriously over the top. We have 8 foot tall, 500 pound genetically enhanced super soldiers, sentient mushrooms that live just to fight, and evil space hells that have to torture everyone to keep themselves alive, and not to be outdone, the Imperial Guard have this. And we should be far enough into the video now, so this is the Baneblade, and it is fucking bonkers. A real world main battle tank usually weighs around 65 tons, and has one main gun and maybe a 50 cal machine gun mounted on the turret. The Baneblade has 13 guns and weighs around 320 tons. Fun fact, it was originally designated as a scout tank. Wait, what the fuck, I hear you say? This is why the real mantra of 40k is everything is gloriously over the top. Let's be real here, the weight of that vehicle would just cause anything it drove on to collapse, and it would dig itself into the ground, be that fields or city roads. For the time being though, let's put actual physics aside while we take a look at this veritable behemoth. History. Now the design of the Baneblade is old from a lore point of view. In fact, it is the oldest standard template construct design of a tank that is still in use by the Imperial Guard. It was first created during the Dark Age of technology, and it was the smallest, yes that's right, 13 guns and 320 tons of armour, and it was the smallest in its line, and so was originally designated as a scout tank, or it was. As gloriously over the top as it is to have a 13 gun, 320 ton scout tank, it's also ridiculously fucking stupid, especially considering the Tortoise can outrun this thing. So it has been quietly retconned to say, while it is the oldest tank design still in use, it was always designated as a super heavy main battle tank. Prior to the Horus Heresy, every Imperial Guard tank regiment had like 100 of these massive behemoths, but unfortunately most were destroyed in the civil war that came as the result of Horus's fall to chaos. The resulting decline and stagnation of the Imperium has meant the handful of remaining forge wheels that can produce a Baneblade have not been able to replace them all, even after 10,000 years. In a way that makes sense, because during the last 10,000 years the Imperium has been at constant war. Just like all the good stuff the Imperium has, it takes time to make them, and more often than not they are destroyed just as fast as new ones can be built. As for production, the Baneblade is pretty much exclusively built in the forges of Mars itself, with only a handful of other forge worlds also producing them. This in turn slows down production. Those produced on the other forge worlds, however, have slight variations from the original design, and many in the Mechanicum consider them fake Baneblades. Armour. One thing every pattern or variation of the Baneblade has in common is its ludicrous levels of armour. The armour plating is 20 centimeters thick, making it damn near impervious to, well, pretty much everything. For those of you who refuse to use metric, that's equivalent to 3 tennis balls or 2/3 of an official NFL football. You also have to take into account it's not high-grade steel that it uses. Instead, its armour is made up of layers of plasteel and ceramine, which is the stuff that they make the spaceships and Space Marine power armour from, meaning this tank can pretty much take hits all day long from 99% of whatever your opponent has brought to the table. It's called a super heavy tank for a fucking good reason, and if your opponent doesn't know you're going to be putting one on the table, then most factions will struggle to deal with it. If you know your opponent will be using one of these bad boys, you can build an army to deal with it, but most of the time this will result in your entire army being based around dealing with this just one single monster of a tank. On the tabletop, that armour translates into a massive toughness of 13 and naturally a 2+ save, meaning 90% of everything has a 1 in 6 chance of actually hurting it, and then it in turn has a 5 out of 6 chance of then just ignoring that shot. And with a massive 24 wounds, it can take a few failed saves. Also, it's so big and well protected, it's actually classed as a rolling fortress, so any troops near it that are not fully visible to the enemy get a bonus to their saving throw. Armaments. This is where things really start going over the top. As standard, it comes with 9 guns, but for no extra points cost, you get to put another 4 on. So naturally, we're going to go with the extra 4 every time, because why the fuck would you not? So let's talk about these guns. It has the following as standard. 1 Baneblade Cannon, 1 Coaxial Autocannon, 1 Demolisher Cannon, 1 Heavy Stubber, 2 Las Cannons, a Twin Heavy Bolter, 2 Twin Heavy Flamers, and then you can add 2 more Las Cannons and either 2 more Twin Heavy Bolters or 2 more Twin Heavy Flamers. All sounds good, but how good are each of these guns and what do they compare with today? Well, the Baneblade Cannon is basically the main gun off a battleship like the USS Missouri. But this is 40k, so you better believe it's been fed some space steroids. Its main role is to put a big fucking hole in anything with armour plating, but it's also perfectly capable of putting that big fucking hole in frankly anything, but using it on infantry is somewhat an overkill. Next we have the autocannon, and that is comparable to the main gun on a modern day battle tank like an Abrams or Challenger. Again, it is an anti-armour weapon, but bullets are bullets and big ones will still fuck up your day. The Demolisher Cannon is a short-range cannon that fires a massive explosive ordnance designed to demolish walls and fortifications, allowing the tanks and infantry to breach them easily. The shell is perfectly capable of destroying anything else, so Demolisher Cannon is very aptly named. A Heavy Stubber is basically 2 50 cal belt-fed machine guns strapped together, the kind of thing that Rambo would have an orgasm over. As a result, it is an excellent anti-light infantry weapon, but will struggle to penetrate heavy infantry or other vehicles. The Las Cannons for years were the most powerful weapon on the 40k battlefield, and were the go-to anti-vehicle weapon of choice for every faction. Although very powerful, their drawback is they only attack once per turn. Over the years they have been both nerfed and buffed, and have even been taken away from some of the factions, like the Eldar. Please Games Workshop, let Eldari have Las Cannons back. This being said, a single Las Cannon can easily kill most characters and light vehicles in a single shot, and take down the biggest of tanks in just a few shots. And this fucking tank has 4 of them. Both the twin-linked Heavy Bolter and Heavy Flamers are primarily anti-infantry weapons. The only reason you would use these guns on tanks is because you've already killed all the infantry. Both weapons have their pros and cons. The Bolter has longer range than the Flamer and does slightly more damage. The Flamer, however, can potentially hit more targets and automatically rolls to hit. In my opinion, it is best to use the Flamers on light infantry and the Bolters on heavy infantry, but in fairness, no infantry is going to have a good day when shot by either of these weapons. So now you have an idea of what these 13 guns are actually capable of. What does that mean on the battlefield? Well, most of these guns have more than 1 attack per turn, so although you can target up to 13 different units with each weapon, you will be rolling in total somewhere between 25 and 50 attack dice per round of shooting. You can see now why it's called a super heavy tank. Just one of these can decimate an entire army in just a few rounds of play. Variations. Although the Baneblade is an absolute beast and good against, well, everything, all at the same time, there are even some specialist versions of it. There is a version designed for taking down Titans, which is no small feat, and once I get round to actually explaining Titans, you will understand why. There is also a very anti-infantry vehicle that is armed with the Vulcan Mega Bolter, which is the Titan-sized version of a Space Marine Bolter. Think of the gun in the A10, then increase its caliber to .75, and then strap 2 of the fucking things together. Needless to say, this thing can spit out so much hot lead it can turn an entire squad into red mist in less than a second. Now both of these variants are still covered in the Las Cannons, Heavy Bolters and Flamers. There are a few more variants, officially 7, but whichever version you look at, you know they're big, tough and covered in guns, so the anti-infantry version can still take on tanks without getting too worried. Conclusion. The Imperial Guard are synonymous with massed infantry and more tanks than a Soviet-era storage yard. Although the Lehman Russ and the Chimera tanks are more common within the Imperial Guard, due to them having what feels like 5,000 different variations, The Baneblade is by far the biggest, baddest and arguably the most famous. The main reason you don't see many on the tabletop is the cost of them, both in points and actual cash. A single Baneblade will set you back £105 or $170 and over 1/4 of your points in a 2000 point game. For that amount of money and points you can field 3 Chimeras, but believe me when I say 3 Chimeras come nowhere near close to the levels of firepower a single Baneblade brings to the table. With over 350 parts to the model kit, it is not for beginners, but some of those parts won't be used as the kit is used to make all 7 different variations of it. But with some well placed magnets, you could easily make the weapons and turrets interchangeable, allowing you to quickly and easily deploy whichever variant will be the most useful. But just the act of slapping any one of these bad boys on the table lets your opponent know you didn't come to fuck around. A single Baneblade or any of its variants is a big, huge, imposing monster of a tank that is covered in guns and is a veritable nightmare for any opponent. Arguably, it is the biggest, baddest, toughest unit in the entire setting that Games Workshop sell. It's only when we start looking at the Forge World stuff do we get into the realms of something dwarfing it, but I don't want to muddy the waters with that thought, so let's just leave it as the biggest, baddest unit in the setting. There is only one downside to the Baneblade in my opinion, and to most people this will be a very minor downside, but to me it's quite a big one. As awesome, badass and deadly as a Baneblade is, it's still not as cool as my beloved Land Raiders. And there we have it, that brings us to the end of this video. If you laughed or learnt anything, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and if you are already subscribed, then don't forget to share this video with somebody who could do with some noob-splaining in their life. Also, leave a comment on your favourite part. I do try and interact with every comment. But if you made it this far, thank you, and I'll see you next time.